And with me today, I have Kyle Smith, a trauma survivor, certified clarity consultant, and an inspiring voice in the journey of healing and transformation. Known for his insightful guidance, Kyle empowers individuals to move beyond their past, break free from mental barriers, and create a fulfilling life. His unique approach combines personal experience, deep empathy, and practical strategies that encourage clarity, confidence, and resilience. Welcome to the show, Kyle. So great to have you here, all the way from Canada.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. And it is pretty amazing that we're in a time where we can have technology where we're just chatting on the other side. I see what you look like, see what it's crazy. It's crazy.
And I
Grateful
know,
to
I
be
love
here.
that. Yeah, just this intertwined connection from all over the globe. Oh,
Mm,
phenomenal.
hmm.
Technology rules. But yeah, tell us about yourself, Kyle. So tell us about your personal journey with trauma and how it led you to where you are today.
Sure. Uh, I would like to go with defining trauma first
Mm,
because I think that with the work that I do, experiences, moments in time, dreams, conversations, anything that can be written down can be written as a story. So I don't quite see trauma as any different from any other story. It still takes the processing and the participation. Uh, when I made a pivot was when I didn't have a very good respect for myself. I didn't have much admiration for myself. Uh, I had a very lesser mindset of myself. And for mindset, I define mindset as the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves or our opinion of ourselves. So many folks understand that mindset's important to develop. However, it's ambiguous. It's unclear what that looks like. So if we have a higher or lesser opinion of ourselves, then we can adjust it and we have a reference point to know where we are.
Interesting. Yes. And so how about yourself? Like what were the pivotal moments that sparked your own kind of process through healing and mindset training?
Totally. A very prominent year was 2016 for me.
Mm,
And I think that it's an accumulation of information. That's where we hit a breaking point. It's not just one moment in time. It's an accumulation, and our our participation in maintaining that pain.
mm,
And so, at this point, I was at a breaking point, and I had this a large amount of emotion built up, and I wasn't the person that I wanted to be at that time. Where my relationship with myself was poor, my relationship with others was poor. It was good in some parts. However, it was not what I know I can bring to the table.
mm,
So, uh, from that point, I actually just was curious about different modalities because the decision to change came before the healing.
interesting.
That comes before any sort of change because a decision is just one plus one plus one plus one plus one. And Steve Jobs has a quote that says, "We can only connect the dots looking backwards, not forwards." Because
Mm,
when we think of where we are right now in this moment and we think of all the decisions it made to get here, it adds up. It makes sense.
mm,
It makes sense why we're in the spot that we are in.
sure.
So I didn't like that spot that I was in and went about a couple modalities, tried therapy, tried counseling, acupuncture, yoga, breath work. Breath work is something I did prior to. That was a practice I already had that I've been doing for 9 years now. And from there, a buddy of mine invited me to do a obstacle event. It's called the World's Toughest Mudder. It's a 24-hour race with obstacles in it, and it was awesome. Before I made this post asking for help, like seeing what resources I can get from the folks that were on my Facebook, I he was asking me, dude, you want to do this Tough Mudder? I did it last year. It's a lot of fun. It's in Las Vegas. It's going to be awesome. 6 months, I said no. I made that post. He sent me a message. He's like, hey, it's still good. So I said, okay. So I went for it. So I had that openness to explore because the pain and the fear of being the way I was worse than exploring something that I was fearful of. And so during this event, there was a lot of time by myself and it was just moving. I wasn't running at all. I was a walker. I can go for long distances walking. Well, I could train for runs too. That's true. Anyways, I was walking a lot of time by myself. It was in the Las Vegas desert and just nothing around me. And what I found was because I was able to break down the body, metaphorically speaking, I was able to release those intense emotions, to process it, to think about my thinking. And I opened up this awareness, this newer level of consciousness where I was actually taking responsibility and accountability for being the common denominator in my problems. So from there, explored a variety of other parts because before this I was a personal trainer, so I was already in the health space. So it was just a smooth transition. It was like flows. It's just going from the body to the brain. And through that time, I had a podcast, met a buddy there. His name was Ryan Sprague, and he introduced me to Mark England and Kimberly Testing. And Mark England started Storywork. He's the founder of the Unlifted Method, and that's that was a very big catalyst point because before that point, I was developing my communication. I was having better dialogue with myself. I was thinking about my thinking, organizing my thoughts, directing my behavior rather than passively just flowing through it. Uh, then met this in a cosmic coincidence, a synchronicity, a happen chance. Uh, yeah, Storywork came into my life and then did the certifications that they have and then combine story work and breath work to be able to alleviate intensity and create meaning in stories.
Wow, amazing that. Oh my God, what a journey. And so from it sounds like you've done a lot of different trainings. Like what specific like techniques or practices do you find has helped you find clarity in your life?
The most prominent, I would say, would be story work and breath work because I practice it as well as I teach it. And that's why I'm also putting it this way because I see the benefit that both of those have.
Okay.
In saying that, I purposefully wanted to make it so that it was holistic and it can integrate with other practices and modalities.
Mm,
So I could do breath work, story work, or NLSE. NLSE cannabis connection, NLSE psilocybin connection,
mm,
NLSE sound bath connection, NLSE yoga retreat, NLSE therapy session. And so I wanted to purposefully put it in because I believe that it's not this or that that works. It's this and that because we all want the same outcome, and that's to feel bloody good about ourselves, feel great about the environment around us, and keep on freaking crushing it.
oh, I
And
love
so
that.
I believe we all want that outcome. And then there's all these different ways to get there, and it's just finding the ones that work the most effective.
Mm,
Uh, the the what I like about the practice that or I've developed is that it has both the ethereal, it has the brain, and then it integrates the nervous system. So it gets into the roots of the body, into the energetic system, to be
mm,
able to unlodge those stories that are backing up emotion, energy, and motion.
yeah. So could you go through like an example for, let's just say one of your clients has suffered from childhood trauma. How would you go about that?
First thing, I would ask them if they are open to going into the story because I will not go into any story that someone is not willing to do themselves.
Okay.
I could not be paid $1 million to force someone to go into a story, even if I believe that it could benefit them. If they're not ready for that to face that dragon, then they're going to lose.
Mm,
They'll go back into where they were and they're not going to open up that opportunity. I've gotten close with some folks where I had this one participant. I'm not going to say names just for the sake of privacy. I had this one participant that we had a story and she's like, Kyle, we're poking something. We're poking something. I'm like, okay, okay. Is it like a good poke? Is it something you want to explore? You want us to back off? She's like, I think we'll back off on this one. And I'm like, all good. So we just went into a different language game to just go from where she was, ooh, I don't want to do this, to elevating her in just a matter of moments. So there's times where I pivot within it. Now, in saying that, let's say someone is open to it, because the people that'll get the most out of this practice have three things in common. They have a sincere desire to change, they have an openness to explore, and they have a willingness to test their pain threshold, because it's painful confronting ourselves.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, having those three things, we are able to really dive in and get like into the nitty gritty. So, the person's open to exploring, they have a desire to change, and they're like, yeah, I'm okay with a little bit of pain right now. So there's a couple parts that could go. It could be, and I do have this game, it's a language game, and it's putting the gorilla on the table. So I asked the person, what is the most intense story? I actually asked right off the bat, the very first thing, what is the most intense story, the one that really hurts, haunts, taunts, annoys you, that is as far back as possible? Are you open to adventuring into that story? And some people will say yes, some people will say no, and that's totally cool. And it's going into that, it's going into that dark place, and then going through the steps, going through the process. And I'm totally cool with sharing the process of as to what it would look like too.
Yeah, no, please do. Yeah, it'd be great.
So it's the theme of the story would be trauma based.
Mm,
So stories have themes. I think of it similar to, I believe most people can resonate with this, where you have a friend, or you are the friend that
mm,
is dating 10 different people, however, they're actually the same person.
mm,
So we can have 10 different stories, and we could have the same theme. We can
mm,
have, and so we can see trauma as a theme. We can see joy as a theme. We can
mm.
see scarcity, abundance, and so on. And so I would ask, cool with it? They're like, yep, we're cool with it. First step is to write it out. So title it, write it out, and write it out conversationally, as if you're speaking to another person. Err on the side of more detail rather than less, using proper grammar and punctuation. And you're writing the story. Another way you can think of it is as if you're watching it on a TV screen, write down what you see.
Mm,
And people doing the first step, you're taking the story from the infinite mind to the finite paper or Google Doc. It
mm,
has a start and it has an end. So many times, this one's one of my favorites, when folks, I'm like, what stories do you want to go into? Or are you cool with going into this story, or asking about the stories? And they respond with, oh, I've got a lot of stories with that. And my response is, everyone says that and they only write out like one or two stories, and then they're gone. They're good. So we make it up to be something so big in our mind. When we take it out of our mind and we put it on paper, then it's smooth.
Interesting.
And so another point with this as well is that it's a point of exposure therapy in a set and setting where it's encouraging and inspiring individuals to be courageous while exploring stories.
Mm,
So I do a breathwork practice for 10 to 15 minutes before we go into the story. So when people go into a story, and even if it is a traumatic story, they're much more down regulated and calm, so they're not as wound up. So they don't have that fight or flight going into writing it. They're more like, okay, yeah, I can do this. I can
mm,
do this. And so that's the first step. The second step is to read it out loud. And if you want to supercharge it, read it to someone else, because that's you showing your heart.
yeah.
That's something that's tough. And then if you're able to, not even if you're able to, because you'll, if it's something that hurts, if it's an ouchie story, really good chance that, I would say 92% chance that there's going to be tears during
Okay.
step two when people are reading it. That's where the feels really start to build, because we're confronting it, we're seeing it, and
Mm,
that's okay.
mm,
And then we go into step three. We read it 30% slower, so 70% your normal rate of speech. The reason for this is, on the first read, we could be holding our breath high and tight in the chest. High and tight, good to fight. low and slow, good to flow. And so what step three does is it forces the breath to go into the belly.
Yeah.
It allows us to take a sledgehammer to that hardened emotion. We just, because we're getting the breath involved, we're getting the body involved. So
Mm,
that's where it differs from therapy or psychotherapy is I'm getting the physical body and the mind working together. It's not solely focused on the mind. So we feel the emotions processing as we're going through these steps.
okay.
Uh, and then the final step is to read and breathe. So at every period, the occasional comma and sometimes and
Mm,
insert a breath. So you're reading it about 30% your normal rate of speech. In, out.
mm,
And you go through that process. And at step 2, 3, and 4, I ask I ask questions for review. What are the emotions I'm feeling? Where do I feel it in my body? And on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most intense, where does this land? And what you'll see at each step is those numbers and those feelings and those emotions are all going to change.
mm,
They'll change, it just happens because our words, then it goes our stories, then it goes our breath, then it goes how we perceive the world around us.
interesting.
And so at the end of it, we go through it, really good chance that they're down regulated. Uh, and if they're not fully through, there's going to be some movement going on. They'll notice a shift.
Mm,
And when there's still the lingering, like it's heavy enough story where it's lingering, similar to how there's daily affirmations, you do the same style, you go through the read and breathe with the same story until you have no emotional reaction or response at
yeah.
all. You find energy neutrality, you find equanimity. You are no longer in the story, you
Mm,
are the master of the story.
wow.
And what I like to ask folks at the end is what does the story mean to you? So
Mm,
turning into a reflection, what does the story mean to me? What does the story mean about me? What does the story mean about my character, about who I am, who I wish to be? And so that's how the process goes. And it's
oh.
interesting thing because that's for trauma. So that's creating distance from the ouchie.
Mm,
We're creating space. However, when it's a story of abundance, it's the exact same four-step method. And we're talking, let's say something like you're celebrating the wins and the progress of the last year. You can even do it of the three things I did today to celebrate the wins and write about it and make a story.
mm,
And what that does is it actually increases the meaning. It brings the story closer to us. So it actually pushes off the intensity of negativity and it actually attracts the abundance
yeah.
and positivity.
There's power in that, power in your story, and there's power in self-talk and just, the words that you say to yourself on a daily basis. So yeah, I just think that's great. I mean, you mentioned about themes at the beginning, and what are some of the common themes that you noticed with people who come to you for trauma?
Uh, the tr- the trauma the trauma itself could be associated with a story, an underlying story. Because I think of trauma as an umbrella term because so many people use it for so much at like all the time.
Yeah.
Like as often as a Canadian says a, people are saying trauma.
Trauma.
It's like redonkulous. It's redonkulous. Uh, so within that, there's a story. Another part of the story. So
Yeah,
for example, it could be a story of rejection, and a person perceives that story of rejection as trauma.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so that's how it would go. So
Okay.
rejection, it would be fear of loss. It
Yeah.
could be a death story. I've done a couple of death stories. Uh, dreams, regular dreams. Got to explore some of those, both positive and negative.
Okay.
Um, I haven't gotten jealousy.
No.
Actually, the list of what I haven't gotten is smaller. I haven't gotten jealousy.
Okay.
Nope. No, I've gotten resentment. Never mind. I've gotten rejection,
Yeah. Abandonment.
abandonment. Yeah. Yeah. Stories about parents splitting,
Yeah.
stories about abusive parents.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Interesting. Yeah.
it's interesting because the themes are like it's interesting because there could be 100 people that experience the exact same quote unquote trauma, and you have a
Mm,
hundred different perspectives of it. You have 100 different stories and meanings to it,
yeah.
and so
Absolutely.
I it's very interesting.
It
Yeah,
is.
it's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. Have you experienced any setbacks or challenges with clients?
Absolutely.
Um,
Oh, with clients,
any?
you know
Yeah.
what? I thought you met with myself, and I'm like,
Oh,
oh yeah,
oh yeah.
I don't know if we have enough time, my friend.
Oh no.
No, it's cool. Setbacks with clients.
Mm,
Not during this practice. There was actually a setback that I had with a previous client that I had as an online coach for fitness and nutrition. And this one was a very awesome moment for me, even though realistically I felt like a loser at the time. Uh, so I describe us as him and I were solid coach client, and
mm,
even like just conversationally, we both had a really good vibe.
mm.
However, in reflection, we were not the right coach and client at that time. And so uh, during that time, I was working with him and he was making some progress, not progress that he was satisfied with.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, fair enough. And then so we're figuring out how to adjust things. And I'm asking him more questions to explore what he's doing outside of what I'm telling him to do.
Mm,
And that's another thing too, is I'm telling him to do things. I'm not allowing him to come to that conclusion himself. So that's something I learned with that point. And then had frustration, and then we parted ways. And then I was thinking, okay, is there something wrong, or where's the issue with the practice?
mm.
Where is it that was it the tracking, the logging, the training, the was it the what was it exactly? So I'm trying to figure this out. And I kid you not, the following client that I had was almost a side by side version of the previous client that was we were struggling together.
Wow.
Only difference is that the client B was older. He was an older fella,
Mm,
and he freaking slayed it. Slayed it. I am so proud of this man. Like, and his wife. His wife just tagged along with his journey and
wow.
just as a side effect was able to make her own changes. It was phenomenal.
Mm,
And he went down like 50 pounds in less than 4 months. And he was building muscle too.
wow.
His I remember, this is so funny. I remember him sending me a message like, dude, like I'm like things are really good. I'm just really chapped. And he was upset. And I was like, what's up? Is there anything that I can help you out? You want to chat about it? And he's like, no, man, like now that I lost all this weight, I threw out like 3 suits that I realized I could wear, and now I have to go shopping, and I don't like spending money on myself.
Oh,
And
wow.
that was his issue. So then I realized, okay, it's not the practice. When someone works the practice works.
Yeah.
So then I thought, well, I am the common denominator
Mm,
because I will say that client B was much more hands off and just wanted to do the work. There was no resistance on his end. He dove in 2 feet and he's like, let's freaking go.
yeah.
And so I figured, it was my communication.
Mm,
So another part of that as well is I was trying to pull him up to where I thought he could be rather than meeting him where he was at.
right.
So that's why I say I'm not going to go into a story that someone doesn't want to go into
Yeah. Yeah.
because that would be forcing them into a situation where they can feel threatened, and that's against the whole point. That's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
That's not safe. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when I chatted with him, then I started getting into communication, words, how important communication and words are, and then it went into the story work soon after that.
Oh, wow. Okay. Fantastic. That. And then I suppose everything that you do, it's all based around mindset, with the fitness, that's all mindset. And obviously the work that you're doing now with clients, that's all about mindset. So are there any daily practices or habits that you recommend for maintaining healthy mindset and clarity and emotional balance?
Absolutely do. I'll share one. So, okay, I'll share two versions of this one. Um, First version, if you're just solo, it would be to, at the end of your day, take 10 minutes, not even 10 minutes, 5 minutes,
Mhm.
and write down the three wins you found from the day.
Wow. Okay.
Not the three wins you passively had or you focused on. And I say that because I think that us waking up in the morning is a win in itself.
Yeah.
I
True.
also have this other crazy thought is when we go to sleep, we have a 50-50 chance of waking up. In that moment in time, it's like anything can happen, you know?
Yeah.
And so by recognizing the three wins, by finding them, we can write down the story or even write down the sentence. Uh, Today I was able to go for a walk and hit my 10,000 step goal. I was able to send 50 emails to potential clients or folks that I want to collaborate with. And the third one would be okay, if it's my own, I woke up this morning. I'm going to go with the easy peasy one on that one. And so when we have this, then we can read the sentence, we can breathe into the sentence, we can feel that celebration, create that meaning.
Yeah.
And then, as a side effect, our mindset, how we think about ourselves, the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves increases. So now we have a higher opinion of ourselves, and that's how we get to finish the day. Many people have a lesser opinion of themselves by the end of the day. There's something Matthew McConaughey, like in his book Green Lights, said that I really like, and it was something along the lines of no matter who is next to you in bed, it's still your head that's being put on the same pillow. You're
Yeah.
still going to sleep at the end of the day with yourself.
True. Mm.
And so when you get to feel good about yourself and laying that head down, you get to sleep restfully, peacefully, knowing that you did something that you're proud of the day, whatever it could be. And it's finding it. It's finding it. Like that's all it is. And
Mm.
then something else you can do in this practice is after you're done celebrating those three wins of the day, you write down the three wins you want to have for tomorrow. You frame the future so that you have an anticipation. And what will happen is your brain's going to start processing it, organizing it. It's going to problem solve while you're asleep, and then it becomes easier to do the thing the next day. And to supercharge this, because my lady and I do this, where at the end of the day we have a debrief where we talk about things that we've done during the day, and we just hang out on the balcony and we're just chilling, and
Mm.
we just talk about our day and how we crushed it in this, and then we just have conversations.
Mm.
And so then what is it that we're going to get done tomorrow? Oh, I have this planned, I have this planned, and this planned. Okay, cool, cool. And just by verbalizing it and speaking it, we feel better about what we're doing and we feel more inspired and action prone to do the thing tomorrow.
Yeah, so true that. Yeah, I suppose in that sense, it's important to choose your partners wisely as well because you don't want a partner who can't communicate efficiently.
Totally.
Mm,
Totally. Absolutely.
interesting. Yeah, thank you. And so, is there any advice that you'd like to give to loved ones, supporting somebody who may be dealing with, childhood trauma?
Specifically childhood trauma?
Well, I'd say any trauma, but
Fair.
yeah, yeah.
Let me breathe into this one. I want to
Mhm.
make sure I give a good answer.
Thank you.
Can you say it one more time, please?
Yeah, so do you have any advice that you'd like to share with loved ones who may be supporting somebody dealing with trauma?
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, I think I got something neat.
Hmm.
The advice would be to support and politely challenge rather than affirm.
Hmm.
Ask questions because questions pull and statements push. And so when we ask, how are you doing? What is it that you're doing to or how can I support you in you being able to grow from this?
Yeah.
Because then it opens up the opportunity for them to be able to tell you how they can be helped. And I find a lot of people assume they know what can help
Mm,
rather than introduce something that could and have them be able to explore it or ask more questions to dive more into it.
yeah, yeah.
And I say challenge rather than affirm because I believe people are quick to affirm. And if we affirm, we're leaving at the surface level.
Mm,
And with the questions, I believe when we get about 3 questions in with a person, when we're having a conversation, that's when we get past the cue card responses and we go into the deep, nitty gritty, like meat of the conversation. We understand their true intentions and their beliefs. Because
yeah.
there's a comedian. This just popped up, so I'll share this comedian skit because I thought it was funny. Uh, there's a comedian. He's like, you know what? I made a solid chunk of stand. I did a solid chunk of stand up, making fun of millennials, and then one day I Google millennial. Turned out I'm a millennial, so I joke about them less nowadays. That just goes to show my hypocrisy. Anyways, and then he goes into he's like, uh, the thing that millennials seem to have in common, the
Mm,
characteristic is they have great self-awareness. They're
mm,
aware of themselves. They can basically diagnose themselves and they totally understand 100% what's going on. They have so much self-awareness. And then he said, I went to a bar just to hang out with a buddy of mine, and a friend of his was there. And we were chatting, we were hanging out, it was good vibes. And then the fella said, uh, it's kind of crazy. I don't come out very often because I have anxiety. And then the comedian asked the question, "Oh, man, I wouldn't have known. What are you doing for your anxiety?" And then the person he was talking to said, "Nothing. I'm letting you know so that you can work around it."
Oh. Oh, thank you. I always say, it's always nice to share some light-hearted stuff, especially when we're talking about such serious topic.
Totally. Totally. I totally agree.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. And so,
My
looking back
pleasure.
on your journey, what would you tell your younger self?
Okay. I have an interesting frame on this one because we're talking time travel. So, depending on the time travel, I'm going to be a nerd about this. First point, if it's the type of time travel where if I go back in time and I say something to my younger self, I don't want to mess up anything that's happened now because I like where I'm at right here. So I don't want to risk that. So if that was the option, I wouldn't even visit them. Second option would be if it was a bubble and it was time locked and I may remember it and he may not, then that's okay. If we're just hanging out and we're just either yeah, we were just hanging out in some beanbag chairs, and I was chatting with him. And let's say in the conversation, I'm coming up with a whole story on this now. Say in the conversation, there was one thing that would be subconsciously or unconsciously planted into my mind where the conversation could be forgotten, but something was still there.
Yeah.
That message would be, you're all good. Honestly, such a big pause for such a not a cinematic ending. It's like, yeah, you're all good, and
Continue living your life.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. Like, just it's like there's gonna be stuff that's gonna be like a little bonkers.
Mm,
In that case, it's like, oh.
yeah.
However, I also thought of this other thing too, because I do story work with inner child work too. I combine those two.
Mm,
And so what I like to do, and this is like you feel this one, where you're going and visiting your younger self.
yeah.
Think of an age where you experienced whatever you think, like whatever the most ones. Predominant ones would be like 6 and 9 for myself. And so I would write a letter to my 9-year-old or 6-year-old self saying thank you for being strong, for being capable, for being able to get me to this place because what we did then is what got us here.
Yeah.
And so why not show gratitude and admiration for the person that got us here?
Mm, true. Yeah. Wow, that's beautiful. I love inner child work. Wow, amazing. And what is the most rewarding part of the work that you do now?
Ooh, the most rewarding part of the work I do now is watching, honestly, it's actually watching things move very, very quickly
Mm,
because it happens very quickly and anticipate folks expect things to move fast, understand that it moves slow,
mm,
and are surprised when it goes fast.
wow.
And so, what I like to do with all the participants is try to collect as many aha moments or pattern interrupts because
Hmm.
that's when there's two different parts of the brain. There's a new connection that's happened, and then we can get some like strengthening, and that's known as myelination through the neurons.
Yeah.
And so being able to see identity shifts or being able to do a language game, which is on the lighter end, there's heavy and there's light. So the 4 step would be heavy and the language games would be light.
Mm.
Even in the light, being able to work with someone and then they send me a message later and say, "You changed my life. Holy smokes." And I'm like, we didn't even get into the heavy stuff. And that's already being able to expand people's mind, their opinion of themselves, their openness. And it's cool. It's like, it's, ah, it's, I'm trying to describe the feeling I have now thinking about what it's like. It's heartwarming. It's inspiring. And I feel it in my heart and in my belly.
Nice. Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. And on that note, how can people find more about the work that you do and connect with you and work with you?
Sure. My website is clarityconsultant.ca. And my socials, anywhere that I'm on a social platform, it's Dapper Dude Kyle, DapperDudeKyle. And if anyone does the 4 step that we talked about today, send me a DM on the Instagram because my response time is the quickest there. Let me know what the experience was like. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to have a conversation and explore.
Oh, wow, that's beautiful. Oh, I love that. Yeah, you literally have just taught everyone how to do the process. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
fantastic. The first time that's ever happened. So thank you.
My pleasure.
Your- is it actually a copyrighted process?
No,
Oh,
no.
okay.
It's not. I,
Oh,
I purposefully tell people because I'm actually curious to see who does it.
interesting.
And I don't really have any expectations of whether many people or fewer people will do it. I think it's a cool I believe that actually I'll put it this way. I believe that if a person's listening to this and they do that 4 step process with stories, like a couple stories, I truly believe that they are already by themselves ahead of the curve. They're in a very exclusive grouping of individuals that are thinking about their thinking to that degree.
Yeah, yeah. True.
And it says a lot about a character
Mm,
when they're able to listen to something and then implement what they've heard.
yeah.
Because we remember 30% of what we read, 50% of how to go 30, 50, 70. 30% of what we read, 50% of what we write, and 70% of what we teach. So I
Mm,
would take it a step further. And once someone has done the 4 step, I encourage them to teach another person to do it because then we embody it. Because through teaching, I believe that that's when we get a full circuit. That's
yeah,
where we get full abundance. It's give, receive, give.
yeah. It's true. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I just find there's power in actually passing that along and just guiding people in your own words. That's when it really sinks in then, doesn't it? Yeah.
Totally, totally.
Wow. So, yeah. Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, your wisdom, your knowledge, and your insights. It's been really great having you on, Carl.
My pleasure. It was fantastic being on. It's
Oh,
fantastic
thank
chatting
you.
with you.
Likewise, yeah. So enjoy the beautiful scenery in front of you, and and I'm sure with my listeners, if you have any questions, I'm sure Kyle would be honored to hear from you. So please do drop him a DM because that's what we're here for. We're here to connect, to inspire, and to educate. And I hope you enjoy this show. I look forward to seeing you all on the next show.